Frankfurt, famous for its skyline and its reconstructed historic centre. But I'm going to show you a few things that an average tourist might not get to see. And we'll begin with two things that are actually right in the historic centre itself.
The first thing we're going to see is well hidden under some of these buildings in the historic centre. You'll need to find one of these two entrances where you'll see this sign. Go on in and you'll find yourself looking at some ancient remains. Most of them are from a medieval royal palace that goes back to the 7th century and its replacement built in the 9th century. But there are also remains of a much older Roman settlement, which is slightly mysterious. It was originally assumed to be a military outpost, but so far no sign of any fortifications have been found. These ruins were discovered in the 1970s when the U-Bahn station was built here. Later, when the historic buildings were reconstructed just a few years ago, the remains were covered over to protect them from the elements, and it's now managed by the Archaeological Museum. Entry to it is free and it's open every afternoon except Mondays and Tuesdays. Just a very short distance away is this little passageway which most people probably walk past or even through without a second thought. But take a moment to admire the vaulted ceiling with the coats of arms of Frankfurt and Nuremberg, and what you're standing in is a gateway dating from the year 1410. This was part of a much larger ensemble of buildings that became a headquarters for merchants from Nuremberg, attending the Frankfurt Trade Fair. Very little of it remains today. In the 1900s, a new road was built through here, which basically destroyed the inner courtyard, and later, more was destroyed in the Second World War and consequent urban development. All that remains now are the two gateways that secured the inner courtyard. The northern gateway, built in the 18th century, is now on private property. It was, incidentally, quite common to have these areas in cities of trade. Travelling merchants could find lodging and storerooms here and use them as trade missions. This was the biggest of its kind in Frankfurt. But let's now move out of the city centre and into the outskirts. For this next one, I took U-Bahn line 7 to its terminus at Heerstraße.
This is a housing development built in the hopeful years following the First World War and possibly a subject for a video in its own right. But hidden away in it is a very uncomfortable reminder of what happened next.
It's one of dozens of bunkers built in Frankfurt during the Second World War, which is to say it was built by the Nazi regime with concrete walls 2 meters thick. And yes, it does have an eagle on it in a style very much associated with the Nazis, although the swastika has been removed. There are a few other surviving bunkers in Frankfurt and several more all over Germany, but I found this one particularly striking. The city is keen to preserve it, standing as it does in the middle of a residential area as a reminder of how heavily the constant threat of war weighed on people's minds. There are plans to convert this building into apartments, but it doesn't look as if anything is actually happening.
And finally, I've come to the other side of Frankfurt to show you the White Tower of Bergen.
This is another reminder of armed conflict, this time in the 15th century. Bergen was a small town belonging to the county of Hanau, later the county of Hanau-Münzenberg. And if there was one thing the Count of Hanau was afraid of, it was the growing power and apparently expansionist tendencies of the free imperial city of Frankfurt. So, the Count built a defensive wall around Bergen to keep Frankfurt from getting its hands on it.
It seems a shame then that in 1977, Bergen was incorporated into Frankfurt.
This tower was completed in 1447 and the town's defences remained until the 19th century, by which time they weren't needed anymore. Only a fraction of the original wall remains, and this one tower. It's a bit tricky to get to since Bergen is only served by buses. I would advise taking the U-Bahn to Seckbacher Landstraße and the M43 bus from there. By the way, this is the second video I've made about some of the less well-known sights of Frankfurt. If you haven't seen it yet, feel free to check out the first video I made a couple of years ago. I've put a link in the description.